Okay, so here's my full review of the all-new Samsung Galaxy S23, the regular Samsung Galaxy S23. Let's go ahead and jump in. First things first, let's go ahead and talk design, and that's because that's the most obvious change that took place here, right? So at first glance, the very first thing you would notice is that it's different. It looks different compared to the regular S from last year. And not only that, it shares even more similarities with the king, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, simply because if you look at the back here, you will see that it shares that same setup with those individual lenses, right? Plus, it has cameras that actually essentially compete with the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, except it doesn't have that, gigantic 200 megapixel main camera. But anyways, before we talk camera there, let's go ahead and talk physical features here really quick, because that's the most drastic change. New look on the back there, and then on the front, what you have is a flat display, right? So to those of you who prefer flat displays, obviously this would be the phone for you. Now, to those of you who have large hands like myself here, this phone is going to feel small in your hands. If you prefer a smaller form factor, this would actually be a pretty nice one to pick up. But if you don't like small phones, stay away from this guy. Go for the Plus, for example, or look for a deal on the S23 Plus. But anyways, you have that Gorilla Glass Victus 2 here. You have aluminum armor, like Samsung likes to call it. So a combo of Gorilla Glass 2 with aluminum armor here. You're looking at a more robust phone, so it should be a little bit more resistant to dings, and that doesn't mean go ahead and just smash your phone against the wall. But anyway, it's a bit more resistant than what you had last year here. It does share some softer corners, right? Some rounder corners here as opposed to what you have with the S23 Ultra, for example. And other than that, you just have your regular physical features on here, right? So power button, volume rocker, right? USB Type-C port. You do have a SIM tray here, and then you have your speakers at the bottom along with the mics around the phone. That is pretty much it in terms of physical features. Now let's loop back to that camera. What you have here is essentially the same stuff you have on the S23 Plus, right? So you have that main camera at 50 megapixel, you have that 10 megapixel telephoto, and a 12 for the ultra wide. In terms of picture quality, taking pictures and videos and all that good stuff, same capabilities. What you have here can actually shoot 8K at 30 frames per second, which is pretty much insane. And then of course on the front here, you do have a 12 megapixel that was downgraded from a 40 from last year regular S22. But here's the catch, or here's the kicker. That 12 megapixel camera on the front here is actually better than what you had on the 40 megapixel S22. In terms of quality, again, Samsung did warn us that, despite having the same hardware on a lot, the different parts that remain the same here, the quality or the result coming out of the function that those parts perform is actually going to be better than what we saw on the previous one. And of course, the cameras will be proof of that. A lot of people are going to tell you, well, it's the same camera as last year. Yes, but in terms of quality, things are different, especially given that you do have a new processing power, a new chipset in there. And speaking of the chipset, let's go ahead and jump on the inside here. What you have is an upgraded Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 made for Galaxies. And I've said this a number of times already, but anyways, the chipset that you have there is made for Galaxy. It's a very, very powerful chipset. So you have on the small phone the same chip that you have on the larger, on the much more expensive Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. That is very telling. So in terms of performance, I'm not going to dive too deep into the details, but I can tell you that performance has been fantastic here. Now, besides the fact that it's a smaller screen, so for myself, I prefer a larger screen, but that's just personal preference. To those of you who like small screen, you have a small screen here, but it's a beast on the inside. So when it comes down to, watching movies, playing games, I don't know, running projects, I'm not sure if you're going to be running heavy projects here, but heavy games, heavy projects, all of that good stuff should work here without any issues. On top of that, what you have here is 8 gigs of RAM, right? And this starts at 128 gigs of internal storage, as opposed to the Galaxy S23 Ultra and the S23 Plus that start at 256 gigs for the base. So 128 for the base, but you can always choose a different config, go for the 512 or the 256 gigs, but you will remain at 8 gigs of RAM. So you do have 8 gigs of RAM combined with our Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 made for Galaxy that just make for a beast that would offer you top-notch performance. And that's pretty much it for performance. Now, I did highlight the display earlier, but didn't really go into deeper details. So the display here does stand at 6.1 inches, which is why you hear me say it's a smaller phone, because compared to the 6.6 that you have on the S23 Plus or the 6.8 that you have on the Ultra, that would be relatively small, right? So 6.1 inches display. What you have, as I mentioned earlier, is Gorilla Glass Victus 2 here. It does support 120 hertz refresh rate, so everything is super smooth on here. HDR10 Plus supported here as well. Picture quality is very sharp, right? We're looking at a dynamic AMOLED display, just like what you have on the other ones, the Plus and the Ultra. So dynamic AMOLED display. The resolution here is 1080 by 2340, so not quite HD, definitely not quite HD. Essentially, it's matching the specs that you have on the S23 Plus, and picture quality, again, very, very good. PPI here is very dense, even more dense than what you have on the S23 Plus at 425, and peak brightness here is the same as what you have on the Ultra and on the Plus at 1750. That is very, very bright. Now, let's forget all of that specs. Let's just talk about if you are in the market for a flagship phone, for Android flagship phone. This is the one to pick up. In terms of user experience, fantastic user experience. Flat display here, which is, again, what the vast majority of the population prefers. Beautiful image quality, fantastic performance, pretty good battery here at 3900 milliamp. A little bit less than I expected, but still definitely good. Now, the good thing with Samsung is that, you know, with that Android 13 and One UI 5.1 that they have here, Samsung always offers different ways of saving battery. If you want to go ahead and turn on some of those features, you should be able to save battery. Now, I can't tell you how long it's going to last based off of your usage, but I can tell you that it does offer good battery life. Not as good as what you have on the Plus, obviously, and not as good as what you would have on the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. But I can tell you that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 that you have here actually does great. You know, it does wonders with the battery management. So you should be okay with this here. So I guess to summarize here, in terms of my personal experience with this, it's been positive. It's a very good phone to those people looking for a regular flagship phone, especially if you're in the Android world. And if you own other Android devices, specifically Samsung, obviously you'll be able to take advantage of that continuity, you know, with the Samsung ecosystem, right? So this would be a very nice pickup. Plus, you know, the camera is top notch. Such good cameras here. Great dynamic range, great picture quality, you know, very sharp pictures, you know, great videos, good video stabilization. Also, these are things that you need to keep in mind. This is a very good phone. Now, with all that being said, if you want to go ahead and grab this phone, make sure to track some of the deals that are available on the S23 here. I will have the link in the description in case you want to go ahead and follow that link and see what deals are currently available on it. Samsung is always running different deals, despite the fact that they had horrible trade-ins in the US, specifically when these things dropped. You know, constantly check the links that I have in the description there, because those are dynamic links and they should be checking for different deals, whether we're talking Samsung or Best Buy or anywhere else. So make sure to check out the links there in order to take advantage of some of the discounts that usually pop up on these phones. So that's just my take on the Samsung Galaxy S23 here, the regular S23. Let me know with any questions you may have. If you have things that you would like for me to go ahead and test out on this phone, the specific phone, or even the Plus, I do own the Plus as well, or even the Ultra, let me know in the comment section. I make sure that I make a video on it. But anyways, I'm gonna catch you in the comment section like I always do. Make sure to share this video if you know anyone who will be interested. Don't forget to like, subscribe, of course, if you haven't subscribed just yet. I'm gonna catch you in the next video. Up until that next video, of course, as always, stay safe out there.